this is the Cat's Library. I'll be your librarian today. I chose an octopus because they are cephalopods, and I'm still trying to have a broad range of animals for this series. I'm gonna have to draw some more insects and reptiles soon because they are becoming pretty scarce among the videos on this channel. In other news, just so you aren't spooked, I used a vertical canvas for this illustration. Engage speed paint! The image that I used didn't specify what type of octopus that this is. I didn't know which one it is either after a quick Google search, as there are about 100 octopus subspecies, and I don't want to go through it in order to find the correct one. So this is just an octopus. Octopi are some of those animals that people tend to know a lot about, or maybe that's just me. Here are some new things that I learned or just forgot while researching. Octopi tend to move along the bottom of the seafloor, moving around by pulling themselves with two of their tentacles while the rest forage for food. Occasionally, they swim by kicking up and down. They mainly eat crustaceans, clams, and snails. Apparently, there have been studies that proved that octopus tentacles can sense light, even if their eyes are obscured. They don't like being in the light. This might be connected to their ability to camouflage. Speaking of reaction to lighting and changing color, I started out the drawing with a very loose sketch with both the subject and the surrounding rocks. I then put in the flat colors for the background and the foreground. With the sand, I added some subtle color variation and a bit of a speckled texture over the sand and rocks. After that, I did the second pass sketch of the octopus. I put more detail into the eyes and I added the webbing between the tentacles. Then I did the third sketch, where I even further refined the drawing. I added shading to this drawing just to see how it would look, and included the rocks in the sketch. This was the last sketch layer that I did, and so I guess that makes it the line art. I think that I like this look. Maybe I'll try it again, we'll just have to see. I tried to match the base colors too much in the flat color pass on the octopus, so then when I added the shading and highlights later, it looked off, and I had to adjust it. I put the blue and white on the same layer, and then I went back to refine the background. Then I spent some time shading the rocks in the foreground. I'm not sure if I drew it right since I don't practice drawing rocks enough, but it's probably one of the better rocks that I've drawn. The algae probably tripped me up. I also need to work on drawing things in perspective. I also went a bit crazy on the soft shading without having enough hard shading, which makes it look really blurry. I guess that works since you're supposed to be looking at the octopus, but it wasn't how it was in the reference, so I might go back and add some more hard shading to the rock. I'll put up on screen whether I remembered to fix that. I adjusted the octopus base colors and then added the white spots over them. I shaded and highlighted the octopus. Then I added some color variation in the orange parts of the octopus to better match the reference. Octopi have a bumpy texture over their skin, or whatever that's called. I achieved this effect by adding a dark gray layer and then hand drawing hundreds of white splotches with a low opacity brush, following the forms of the body. I then set it to a linear light layer. I went back to the background after that, adding a shadow behind the octopus and adding detail to the sand and the rocks. That should be about all that I had to say for the drawing portion. You can just watch the rest, and that means it's time to go on to the story section. I couldn't really find a specifically octopus story, but apparently Medusa may have been based off of an octopus, and the Kraken may have been partially based off of one, with the other inspiration being giant squid. I don't really see the Medusa to octopus comparison, but Wikipedia seemed to think it was a real thing, and I like Greek mythology. The octopus inspiration was stated to be from the Perseus myth. Perseus was quested with killing Medusa, because he didn't have a birthday gift for this king guy who had a crush on his mother, but neither Perseus nor his mother liked. So he got the gods to give him a whole bunch of swag, so that this was at least possible, because Medusa could turn people who looked at her to stone. She also had two sisters who were also Gorgons, and all of them had snakes for hair. unless you didn't already know that. Perseus went and found this completely different group of 3 women who knew pretty much everything and blackmailed them into telling him where Medusa was. Then he snuck up on Medusa with a reflective shield when she was asleep and cut her head off. He kept the head around for most of his adventures getting home, since it could still work at turning people to stone, which he used on his enemies in several occasions. Medusa's head specifically is what Wikipedia listed as being inspired by an octopus because of the general size and the snakes being sort of like tentacles. I'm not really sure about this, but I don't have evidence either way that the Greeks knew what an octopus was, so whatever. I did not research that further. I just wanted to tell the Perseus myth. The Kraken was a cryptid, which means that it is a creature that has scattered reported sightings from people who could not provide proof for the creature's existence. The retellings of such sightings can sometimes get out of control and become myth in a way. Thus, there isn't a set narrative for the Kraken. There are just recorded sightings and speculation about those sightings. The first recorded description, according to Wikipedia, was by an Italian sailor in 1700. It was described as a many-armed or many-horned creature. About 50 years later, the term Kraken was developed to explain this type of animal. It was also speculated to be a crab, starfish, or octopus due to the vagueness of the original accounts. There are also myths that the Kraken wasn't an animal but a string of islands where fish tended to live and that made for good fishing. There was an idea that Kraken caused whirlpools. In 1873, a fishing boat came upon a creature that they assumed was a Kraken, as it was huge and had tentacles, and they fought it. It swam away, but they managed to cut off some of the tentacles back to a lab for study. Wikipedia did not specify if they brought it to a lab or a museum, and I don't know what was standard for that era, but they brought it in for study. Giant squid are big enough to get into fights with whales, but tend to live deep under the ocean's surface, and are thus rarely ever seen by humans. And that's the end of the video, and the end of the videos for the year. My resolution for next year is to plan out which videos are coming out which week, and I might stick to that. That is it for now. Bye, and Happy New Year!